Good morning. I'm Pastor Corby Johnson in Safford, Arizona, and I'm a United Methodist pastor at the First United Methodist Church in Safford, Arizona. It is a beautiful day here. If you're in Iowa, sorry, I hear you're having blizzards. Today it's a beautiful blue sky. The mountain does have snow on it, but it'll be about 70 degrees today. Today is February 5th, and we are going through the Proverbs. If it's your first time with us, I'm so glad you found us. And anyone that wants to share this broadcast, you are welcome to do that. Share it onto your Facebook. Just make sure you give me a little tagline that it's Pastor Corby from Safford. Today is February 5th, Proverbs 2, verses 12 through 22. I'm going to read this to start in the New International Version today. We'll start with verse 12. Wisdom will save you from the ways of the wicked, from people whose words are perverse, who have left the straight paths to walk in dark ways, who delight in wrongdoing and rejoice in the perverseness of evil, whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. Wisdom will save you also from an adulterer, from the wayward one using seductive words, who has left the partner of youth and ignored the covenant before God. Surely this house leads to death, and the paths to the spirits of the dead. None of who goes to the unfaithful will return or attain the paths of life. Thus you will walk in the ways of the good and keep the paths of the righteous. For the upright will live in the land, and the blameless will remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the unfaithful will be torn from it. Oof. Sounds pretty tough, doesn't it? Tough love? We have guidelines, don't we? And the Bible gives us those guidelines to live by. And one of the things is when you make a covenant before God. And when I read this, I thought about the covenant we made when Philip and I got married, and the covenant you made when you got married. And living in our society today, it is kind of difficult to stay in a marriage. There are so many things that pull you this way and pull you that way. But marriage is a sacred act, and it's designed to stay together not just for the children or while the children are growing, but for a lifetime, growing together and learning to love each other with warts and all the different faults we each have, being able to work on those faults together as a family. So that said, our imagined portion today, imagine yourself being in a position to begin an adulterous affair. How did you get there? Did it eke in little bits at a time and you really didn't even notice? Maybe you thought you were having fun and just joking around with a person and getting to know them, and all of a sudden something changed. And you found yourself, to begin with, an adulterous affair in your mind. We need to protect our minds, that when those things happen, we close that door and say no, and envision your spouse, that your spouse is the one that you love, that you honor, and that you cherish. So how do you get out of this meeting with somebody else that sparks that kind of excitement in you? How do you get out of that before you become involved in an adulterous affair? That's something that I want you to discuss with your spouse. We can put safeguards in place. So we know that if this happens, we don't allow ourselves to be with that person again by ourselves. We make sure that we guard our hearts and love the person that we go home to at night and we wake up to in the morning. But I want you to discuss this with your spouse if you're married. And if you're not married, just look at what kind of relationship that you want. And write down some of the qualities that you find really important in someone that you're going to spend your life with. And I suppose fidelity would be at the top of the list, wouldn't it? The next part is an activity. If you are in a serious relationship or married, read the psalm together. Read it together and talk about it. What should you avoid? What should you stand fast to? What should you include to protect your relationship and your family when a husband and wife who has children are stepping outside the marriage and the marriage ends? It affects the entire family. Most definitely affects your children, right? But it affects your siblings and your nieces and nephews and your parents and your aunts and uncles. It really truly affects the entirety of your clan. So then your action, and I hope this is going to be a fun one. If you're married, I would like to see you renew your wedding vows. Now you can do this in the privacy of your own home. If you have a copy of them, and I hope you do, get them out and look and see what you promised each other. And then renew that promise, renew that pledge. Enjoy that connection that you have with your favorite person. And then talk about how can we remain faithful in this marriage, and where are the temptations and how we can stay away from them. And then our focus verse is verse 20. And verse 20 reads, "Thus you will walk in the ways of good and keep to the paths of righteousness." Thus you will walk in the ways of good and keep the paths of righteousness. Want to say it with me? Thus you will walk in the ways of the good and keep to the paths of righteousness. Now this is the verse that I chose. But when you read this psalm, if another verse just pops out at you, by all means, that is your verse. That's your verse to write on a piece of paper and put on the bathroom mirror or on the dash of the car or in your workstation, somewhere that's going to enliven you for the day and for years to come. I'm so glad that you joined us today for devotions in the Proverbs, and we'll continue this on Monday morning. Hope to see you then. Amen? Amen.